My name is Tina Myers. I'm 34 years old, and I schedule things for a living. 17 days before my brother's wedding in Hawaii, I found out my mom and my dad were the only people in two entire families without plane tickets. When I asked the bride about it, she texted back, "OMG, relax. If they want to go, they can swim there. LOL. My reply was short. Okay, understood. Julie boarded her flight to Maui believing she had won. 29 missed calls later, she learned what that quiet little reply actually meant, but the calls come later. This story starts with a binder, a garage calendar, and 14 months of work nobody ever saw. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally draw their lines and family drama meets a calm, steady voice. If stories about dignity, boundaries, and the moment everything turns speak to you, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe, because you won't want to miss what happened when the phone started ringing from paradise. Here's what you should know about me. For 12 years, I've been an executive assistant to the chief operating officer of a freight logistics company in Cincinnati. My job is simple to describe and hard to do. I make problems disappear before the meeting starts. Flight canceled in Denver. I have a new route before the client hears about it. Two contracts contradict each other. I catch it on page 40. My boss calls me the smoke detector because I go off before there's a fire. I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I'm the reason things work. It was the same at home. I did Dad's taxes every February at his kitchen table. I kept Mom's appointments in my phone with color codes. When Thanksgiving needed a turkey, a schedule, and a referee, all three were me. My little brother Daniel used to joke that our family ran on Tina Standard Time. He wasn't wrong. I had a rule, and I'd had it so long I thought it was a personality. If I handle it, nobody gets hurt. Say it out loud and it sounds noble. Live it for 12 years and it just means you're the one holding everything, always, with both hands, while everyone else claps for the people in front. I didn't resent it. That's the strange part. Being useful felt like being loved, and I never checked whether the two were actually the same thing. I filed, I fixed, I smoothed. The machine hummed. Then, 14 months before that text about swimming, my brother sat down across from me at a diner, slid his phone over with a photo of a ring, and handed me the biggest handle-it of my life. Before the ring, you need the calendar. My parents, Frank and Carol Myers, got married on June 14th, 1986. There was no wedding. They were broke. Dad was 28, a press mechanic at a print shop. Mom was 26 and packed school lunches for a living. They stood in a borrowed chapel with borrowed rings, and the pastor's wife was the witness. One photo exists, a blurry Polaroid where Dad's tie is crooked and Mom is laughing at it. Every June since, Dad has done the same thing. He walks into the garage, takes down the hardware store calendar, and draws a red circle around June 14th. 40 years of calendars. He kept everyone stacked on a shelf above the workbench like rings inside a tree. Mom kept her own archive. A shoebox of handmade cards, one for every anniversary, because store-bought ones were 60 cents they didn't have in 1986. That's the marriage I grew up inside. Steady, unphotographed, and solid as the workbench. In March of this year, Dad's heart finally asked for attention. 1 stent, 3 days in the hospital, and a cardiologist who called him the easiest patient of her week. By May, he was walking the block again, cleared to travel if we planned it right. He only had one wish on the other side of that scare, and he said it with his glasses off, which is how you know he means something. He wanted to see Daniel married. Then the wedding date went out on thick cream paper. Saturday, June 13th. Maui. The day before my parents' 40th anniversary, Julie knew what that weekend was. I had told her myself, back when I assumed dates meant something to her. She'd smiled and said, "A date is just a date, Tina." Daniel is 31. A sales engineer, the kind of guy who explains conveyor systems with his hands and means every word. He met Julie Kingsley 2 years ago at a charity gala held at one of her family's venues, when the sound system died and he fixed it with a paperclip and pure nerve. Julie was 29, gorgeous in a way that photographs even better than it looks, and she ran marketing for Kingsley House. If you don't know Kingsley House, you've seen it anyway. 3 event venues around Ohio, all white stone and glass, all over the wedding magazines. Her mother, Sandra, built the company and ran it like a cathedral where the religion was appearances. Nothing in their world was owned casually. Everything was staged, lit, and captioned. Dinner at their flagship felt like being an extra in someone else's commercial. I noticed early that Julie never just entered a room, she arrived at it, the way a product launches. Daniel didn't see any of that. He saw a woman who laughed at his jokes and cried at his toast to our parents, and honestly, That version of Julie may have existed. Within a year, he'd left his job to become operations director at Kingsley House, which sounded like a promotion and functioned like a leash. His paycheck, his fiancée, and his future all came from the same address now. At the engagement party, Sandra found me by the bar. She was elegant, precise, and about as warm as a contract. She shook my hand, looked me over like a quote from a vendor, and said the sentence I should have paid more attention to. "So you're the sister who's good with logistics. We'll make use of that. We'll make use of that." They did. It started small, the way these things do. "Tina, you're so organized. Could you track the vendor deposits?" "Tina, you're family now. Would you build the weekend timeline?" Family, I learned, is the word people use when they mean free. Within 2 months, I was the unofficial, unpaid coordinator of a destination wedding for 180 guests, run through a company that plans weddings for a living. Read that again. They had staff. They used me. I built a binder, because I'm me. 3 rings, color tabs, every vendor contract, every contact, a phone tree for emergencies, a timeline broken into 15-minute blocks. The florist, Bree Calloway, had worked corporate events with me for 10 years, and when she saw it, she whistled and said Kingsley House would charge $4,000 for that binder. I did it for a diner coffee and a thank you that never came. And here's the part I want to be honest about, because it matters later. I knew I was being used. I'm not a woman who misses a pattern. I find patterns for a living. But Daniel would squeeze my shoulder and say, "This wedding only feels possible because of you." And Mom would ask what song they'd play for the mother-son dance. And Dad started doing his physical therapy twice a day, so he'd walk strong in Maui. So I stayed on the job. You can see a trap clearly and still stand in it, if the people you love are standing there too. The binder got heavier every week. I told myself the weight was love. Some lies weigh 3 pounds and have color-coded tabs. The first cut was a photograph. In October, Kingsley House hosted an engagement shoot at the flagship venue, Golden Hour. A photographer whose name Julie said like a password. My parents were invited, and Mom wore her good blue dress and brought lemon bars nobody ate. The photos were beautiful. I know because I saw the gallery before the website did. There was one shot I loved, the whole group on the terrace steps. Dad's hand on Daniel's shoulder, Mom mid-laugh. When the spread went up on the Kingsley House site the next week, that photo was there, and my parents were not. Cropped. The frame now started at Daniel's shoulder and ended at Julie's mother. I called Julie, polite as a receptionist, and asked if there was a fuller version they could post. She didn't even pause. "It's about composition, Tina. Some people belong in the picture. Some people are the background." She said it lightly, the way you'd explain a font choice. I remember standing at my kitchen counter, phone warm against my ear, understanding that I'd just heard something true about her whole world, and then deciding, carefully, not to understand it. Instead, I handled it. I got the original file from the photographer, printed it 16 by 20, framed it, and hung it in Mom's hallway. Mom cried and called me thoughtful. She never knew about the website because I made sure she didn't. I told myself I was protecting her. Looking back, I was protecting the arrangement. I fixed it quietly, and everyone stayed comfortable, including the person who'd done the cutting. That was my first mistake dressed up as kindness. It would not be the last, and the next one had a price tag with 2 seats on it. In January, the Kingsleys made an announcement, and I'll admit it, I was relieved. Kingsley House would arrange all travel for immediate family on both sides. Flights, rooms at the estate, island transfers, the works. It made sense. The venue was a private estate on Maui's north shore called Seaglass Point, the kind of place with no public booking page and a gate you don't see until you're through it. Guests came in on a manifest, moved on chartered shuttles, slept in a room block Kingsley House controlled. You didn't attend that wedding? You were processed into it. For my parents, this was the good news of the year. Mom found a dress on a spring sale rack, $89, ocean blue, and hung it on her closet door like a promise. She practiced walking in new sandals around the living room while Dad timed her, laughing. Dad asked me for one thing only, an aisle seat on the plane, for stretching the heart-side leg, he said, tapping his chest like it was a coworker he'd forgiven. Here's what I noticed, because noticing is my job. Travel was the one lane of this wedding I wasn't allowed to touch. Every spreadsheet, every vendor, every timeline crossed my desk eventually, except that one. Twice, I asked the Kingsley House travel desk for my parents' confirmation numbers, just to log them in the binder. Twice, I got the same smooth answer. The travel desk has it handled, Tina. I wrote a note to myself in the binder margin, actual ink, Actual words. Get F and C confirmations by May 1. I want that on the record. I saw the flag. I pulled the thread. Every list I was allowed to see was perfect. The one list I couldn't see was the flight manifest. By spring, I understood what this wedding actually was, and I understood it the way staff always do, from the loading dock side. Bree called me in April about the flowers. Tina, she said, they rejected peonies because they read too soft on camera. Who talks like that? The answer arrived a week later, when the guest list crossed my desk for seating, and I saw a cluster of names with no relation to anybody. I looked them up, because of course I did. Commercial lenders, a managing partner from a private investment group in Columbus, 2 men from a bank that specializes in hospitality debt. Bree heard it plainest from a Kingsley House event manager after 2 glasses of wine at an industry mixer. The company was leveraged to the roofline, all 3 venues, and a refinancing deal was in quiet trouble. The Maui wedding was the show. One flawless weekend, one flawless family, the brand alive and glowing in front of the money. The flowers were chosen for the camera. The band was chosen for the camera. I watched Sandra review the seating chart one afternoon, the way my boss reviews a balance sheet, moving names between tables with 2 fingers, murmuring about optics. Nobody said the word desperate. In that world, you never say the quiet part. You cater it. I didn't judge them for the debt. Honestly, businesses borrow. But I felt something cold settle in when I understood the logic underneath. Because in a wedding that is really a pitch deck, everything gets sorted into what sells the story and what doesn't. Flowers, songs, people. A wedding that is really a pitch deck needs everything on brand. I just hadn't learned yet what happens to the people who aren't. 17 days before the wedding, the final itinerary went out to both families, a glossy PDF with palm trees on the header. I read it the way I read everything, line by line, and my stomach went quiet before my brain caught up. Every traveler had a confirmation code next to their name. My aunt had one. Julie's college roommate had one. Sandra's hairstylist, and I promise I am not inventing that, had one. Frank Myers, nothing. Carol Myers, nothing. No flight codes, no room assignment, no shuttle group. Their names simply weren't in the travel section at all, as if the document had never heard of them. I didn't panic. I processed. Step 1. I called the Kingsley House travel desk. Friendly. Assume the best. Clerical stuff happens. A pleasant voice said she'd look into it. Step 2. Next morning, I called again and got the word processing, delivered like a door closing softly. Step 3. I sent a short professional email, the kind I've written 1,000 times, requesting booking confirmations for Frank and Carol Myers at their earliest convenience. Then I did my own checking, because trust is nice and verification is nicer. The room block at Seaglass Point had closed 3 weeks earlier. Closed, finalized, released. 3 days of silence went by, and if you think 3 days isn't long, try 3 days of watching your mother iron an ocean blue dress that may have nowhere to go. On the 4th morning, the travel desk replied, and the whole email was 1 line, and 1 line was all it needed. Per the family, that portion of the list was finalized. Per the family. I sat in my parked car outside my office and read those words until they stopped pretending to be a mistake. There was a group chat for the wedding party. Mostly logistics, mostly me answering questions other people were thanked for. That night, I used it, deliberately, where things get read. I kept it clean and factual, like a work escalation. Quick flag, I wrote. Mom and Dad Myers have no flights or room on the final itinerary, and the travel desk says the list is finalized. Can you help me fix this today? The typing dots appeared and disappeared twice. Then Julie's answer landed. And I'm going to give it to you exactly as it sat on my screen, because I've read it enough times to have it memorized for life. OMG, relax. If they want to go, they can swim there. LOL. Then a little wave emoji, blue and cheerful, riding along at the end like a signature. Her maid of honor tapped a laughing reaction onto it. Somewhere across town, my mother was probably asleep with sandal blisters from practicing, and here was a cartoon wave laughing at her. I stood at my counter for a long time. I'm told I'm hard to read, and I hope that's true, because what moved through me in those minutes wasn't calm. It was a whole career of watching powerful people test what they can get away with, and recognizing, finally, that this had never been sloppy planning. This was policy. My thumbs hovered. I could have written a paragraph with evidence and dates. I could have called Daniel's number and gotten his voicemail again. Instead, I typed the only thing that was completely true. Okay, understood. Julie read it within the minute. No reply, and I didn't need one. She thought she had ended a conversation. What she'd actually done was start a countdown, and only one of us could hear it ticking. Understood is not the same as accepted. That night, I opened my laptop and tried to buy my way around her with my own money, and I want you to watch me try, because I need you to know this door was pulled shut, not left shut. Flights first. Cincinnati to Maui in mid-June, wedding season, less than 2 weeks out. $3,900 a seat, with a connection in Los Angeles and a middle seat at the end of it for a 68-year-old man with a stent. Fine. I have savings. I kept going. Rooms next. The island's north shore was wrung dry, and the polite lady at the closest hotel actually laughed, kindly, and said June books out by February. The bed and breakfast 40 minutes south had been swallowed whole by, and I quote, a large wedding party from Ohio. I called Seaglass Point directly, business voice on. I'm with the Kingsley Myers wedding, I said. I need to add 2 guests to the manifest immediate family of the groom. The front desk was lovely about it and immovable. The guest manifest is managed exclusively by Kingsley House, ma'am. We can't add names on our end, not for anyone. No manifest, no gate, no shuttle, no seat at the ceremony, and it wouldn't have mattered if I'd bought the plane. I even priced a condo on the far side of the island before I caught myself, because what was I going to do? Fly my parents 11 hours so they could wave at a locked gate in nice clothes. I closed the laptop around 1 in the morning. Every single door had been locked from the inside weeks ago, quietly, while I was busy color-coding their timeline. Someone doesn't lock that many doors by accident. Someone locks them on purpose. You're wondering about Daniel, and you should be. Where was my brother while his parents were being erased from his own wedding? 10 days before the wedding week, Julie had booked the 2 of them into a couples retreat in the California mountains, a pre-wedding intention-setting program, her words, with a strict digital detox. Phones surrendered at the front desk like car keys. At the time, it had sounded like harmless wellness theater. Now it looked like scheduling, and I know scheduling when I see it. The retreat had an emergency line, and I used it. I said the words, family emergency without shame, because it was one. What came back, hours later, was a message relayed through a staff member with the tone of a receipt. Daniel says he understands, and he's at peace with his parents' decision not to fly, given his dad's health, and he doesn't want anyone pressuring dad about it. I stood in my kitchen and read that message maybe 10 times, and the room got very quiet, because there it was. His parents' decision not to fly. Somebody had gotten to my brother early, months ago probably, and told him a story. In his story, Mom and Dad had gracefully bowed out, worried about the stent, and the kind thing was not to push. That's why he'd never brought it up, never questioned the itinerary he barely saw. There was no cruel. My brother wasn't cruel. My brother was managed, and I recognized the technique the way a locksmith recognizes a pick. Curate what a person sees, and you never have to argue with what they think. I'd spent 12 years doing it to calendars. Julie had spent 14 months doing it to him. 2 days after the swim text, Bree called me from her shop, voice low under the cooler hum. Tina, she said, I'm forwarding you something, and then I never sent it. It was an email thread between a Maui transport vendor and the Kingsley House travel desk, the kind of vendor-side chatter florists get copied on by accident and coordinators read out of habit. Attached was the shuttle roster, built from the final flight manifest, locked 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks? Back when Mom was still practicing in her sandals. I scrolled the passenger list with my coffee going cold. Aunt Patty, the hairstylist, the lenders and their wives, and then, near the bottom, 2 entries with a strike-through drawn clean through them like a fence rail. Myers, F. Myers, C. Next to the strike. A note in the comment field, brisk and administrative. Trimmed, per JK trimmed. The word you use for a budget line, a hedge, a photo. I sat with that email a long time, and I want to be clear about what I did not do with it. I did not forward it to Daniel, or to my parents, or to a single soul. I never showed it to anyone, and I never will. There was no courtroom coming, no jury to convince. It was just the truth, sitting quietly in my inbox, confirming what the wave emoji had already told me. What it changed was the story I'd been telling myself. Every quiet fix I'd ever performed rolled back through me. The cropped photograph, the swallowed slights, the smoothing, the handling, and I finally saw my own fingerprints on the machinery that had trimmed my parents. You can't unknow a thing like that. The only question left was what I owed, and to whom. What I owed, it turned out, fit in a 3-ring binder. I took a personal day. I printed a fresh cover page, updated the index one last time, and confirmed every vendor contact was current because I don't do sloppy exits. On top, I clipped a one-page letter, the most professional document I have ever written. It thanked the couple for the opportunity, resigned my role as wedding coordinator effective immediately, and noted that all materials, contacts, and timelines were enclosed and organized for a seamless transition. No accusations, no mention of tickets, or oceans, or swimming. Then I drove the 25 minutes to Daniel and Julie's townhouse, where Julie was between workouts, blender in hand, in the kind of matching set that costs more than my mother's dress. She looked at the binder, then at me, with genuine confusion, because in her world free labor doesn't have legs. "You're being dramatic," she said, half laughing, waving the smoothie at the whole situation. "It's just tickets, Tina. This is what boundaries do to families." I set the binder on her stone countertop, squared its edges out of pure habit, and kept my voice at room temperature. "It's all there, tabbed and indexed. Congratulations on the wedding," and I walked. "Here's the thing I keep returning to." She let me. No apology, no wait, no counteroffer, just a shrug I could feel through the door, because people who think your background never expect the background to move. She believed the machine ran on its own. She had never once looked behind the wall. I sat in my car in her driveway for 1 minute, hands on the wheel, and felt something I can only describe as terrifying lightness, like setting down a suitcase you forgot you were carrying. If you've ever been the one who quietly holds everything together, the schedules, the peace, the family, you know exactly how loud that silence felt. Tell me in the comments what you finally stopped carrying. I read everyone. And make sure you're subscribed. Because what Julie found when she finally opened that binder, and what she did about it, is a story all by itself. The binder stayed on that counter. The countdown kept ticking. That evening, I drove the 15 minutes to my parents' house, and I did the thing I had never once done in 12 years of managing this family. I told them everything, with nothing sanded off. The missing tickets, the closed room block, the gate, the manifest, the word finalized, and the text, read aloud off my phone, wave emoji and all, in their yellow kitchen with the clock ticking over the stove. If they want to go, they can swim there. My mother didn't say anything for a while. She looked at the ocean blue dress, which was hanging pressed on the pantry door for its trip, and her hands went flat on the table, and she nodded slowly, the way you nod when a doctor confirms what you already felt in your body. My father took his glasses off. He cleaned them on his shirt, set them down, and looked at the backyard instead of at me. "We never had a wedding," he said. "We had a marriage." He let that sit, then turned to me with his jaw set the way it gets when a machine can't be repaired, only respected. "Don't you dare beg anybody to let us into a party." That was it. That was the whole verdict. My mother cried exactly once that night, quietly, over the dish towel. And it wasn't about Maui at all. It was about Daniel, her boy, standing on a beach 2 weeks from now thinking his parents couldn't be bothered to come. I promised her the truth would find him without me forcing it, and I had no idea yet if that was a promise I could keep. On my way out, I stopped in the garage. The calendar hung over the workbench, June open, the 14th waiting for its 40th red circle. I stood there in the smell of oil and sawdust, and I knew what I was going to do with the weekend Julie stole. I had $6,000 in savings earmarked for a someday I'd never scheduled. I spent it in 4 days, and I've never spent money better. A white tent for the backyard, chairs, string lights, rented from a supply company that answers on the second ring. Bree did the flowers at cost, peonies, specifically peonies, soft on camera and everywhere. The kitchen crew from my parents' old church took the food, honey ham and 3-bean salad and rolls. Funeral foods, happier cousin. A photography student from the university, $150 and a free dinner. And Pastor Reed, 60-something, who had buried half that congregation's parents and married the other half's kids, said yes before I finished the sentence. A vow renewal. Sunday, June 14th, 4 in the afternoon. Frank and Carol Myers, 40 years late for their own wedding. The guest list was the anti-manifest. Aunt Patty, who'd quietly declined Maui when she heard my parents weren't on the list. The neighbors who'd watched my parents' porch light for 30 years. Dad's old crew from the print shop, men with clean fingernails now and the same dirty jokes. Mom's cafeteria ladies, who raised a whole town on Chicken Patty Day. Nothing went online. No announcement, no hashtag, no photos of invitations artfully angled next to coffee. I wasn't competing, and I wasn't hiding, I just wasn't performing. The date was ours before it was theirs. by exactly 40 years, and I'd made sure Julie knew that once, politely, and been told a date is just a date. Fine. She could keep the 13th. We had the 14th, and a tent going up between the tomato beds. I wasn't building a rival wedding. I was building the thing their wedding was pretending to be. I went back to Kingsley House exactly once after the binder to return engagement party items I'd signed for personally, because my name stays clean even when my heart isn't. A candle arch, 2 crates of linens, a checklist with every item initialed. The events wing was chaos in nice shoes, and nobody stopped me, because nobody ever notices the person carrying things. That's how I ended up in the back corridor, outside Sandra's office, holding crate 2, while her voice came through the cracked door like a blade being sharpened. Not the florals, Julie, the family. The lenders aren't flying 5,000 miles for flowers. They are coming to see a flawless family, and you will give them one. Do you understand me? I heard Julie answer, and I barely recognized her voice. Small and fast. Yes, Mom. I know. I'm handling it. A pause. Then Sandra again, colder. Handle it like a Kingsley? Sloppy sentiment is how your grandmother ended up in exactly one photograph. I set the crate down very quietly. Later, an older woman in the linen room, Dot, who has folded napkins there since the first venue opened, told me the rest without me asking, the way old employees do. Sandra's own mother-in-law, Julie's grandmother, a farm woman with a loud laugh, kept home from Sandra's wedding years ago. Too country for the photos, they said back then. They gave her the family album afterward, like a receipt. For 1 second, standing among the folded whites, I saw the whole assembly line, and I saw the girl inside the brand, 6 years old maybe, learning that love is a casting decision. 1 second. Then Julie came around the corner, saw me, and the brand snapped back on like track lighting. You'll regret making this weird, Tina, she said. Everyone always comes back. She wasn't wrong. Somebody did come back, just not the somebody she meant. Here's what happens when 14 months of invisible work walks out the door. Nothing at first, then everything, slowly, like a tide going out and showing you where the boat was resting on rocks the whole time. The shuttle company called me because the final contract was sitting unsigned in somebody's inbox. The band's manager called me about a timeline that had the first dance scheduled during the ceremony. The officiant's assistant called to ask gently who was holding the rings, because 3 different people had told her 3 different names. Every call, I was kind, and I was useless on purpose. I'm no longer coordinating, I'd say. Warm as a hotel operator, you'll want the Kingsley House events office. Then I'd give the correct number and wish them a beautiful event, and hang up, and go back to folding paper flowers. I didn't sabotage anything, and I want that understood. I didn't cancel a single vendor, didn't whisper a single warning, didn't move one chess piece. I just stopped playing for free, and it turns out that's all it takes when your work was the load-bearing wall. 10 days out, Julie texted me for the first time since the wave emoji. No greeting, no apology, just, quick question, who's the contact for the string quartet? I looked at that message for a while, standing in my kitchen, and I felt the old reflex twitch, the fixer, the smoother, the good sister who handles it. I typed back one line, all contacts are in the binder, tab 4. She didn't reply, and she didn't ask again, but the calls kept coming from other numbers, more of them every day. 14 months of invisible work doesn't vanish quietly, it leaves a shape. And out there in the middle of the Pacific, the shape was starting to show. The Monday of wedding week, the whole production flew west. I knew because the group chat, which nobody had removed me from, filled with boarding passes and champagne flutes, and someone's toes against a window shot of clouds. Julie posted a sunset from the Seaglass Point cliff that evening, all coral and gold, with a caption I choose to believe was aimed at no one and landed on us anyway. Paradise doesn't do standby. Her followers ate it up. I put the phone down and went back to what my hands were doing, which was folding paper flowers at my parents' dining table, because Mom had decided real peonies needed paper cousins on every table, and when Carol Myers decides, you fold. We made about 200 of them over those evenings, Mom creasing, me twisting stems, an assembly line with a radio playing songs from 1986. Out in the yard, Dad repainted the garden bench that had been peeling since 2 presidents ago because your mother will sit there, and it should be nice. He tested the string lights 3 separate times, on a stepladder I pretended not to worry about. A 68-year-old man with a stent and a level, refusing help up. The tent company came Thursday and put up the white canvas between the tomato beds, and when the evening light came through it, the whole backyard glowed like the inside of a shell. I stood at the kitchen window watching my parents walk the yard, pointing, planning, laughing at something I couldn't hear, and I thought about the other picture being assembled 5,000 miles away, the lit cliff, the camera palette, the manifest. 2 pictures were being set up that week, an ocean apart. Only one of them was true. Wednesday before the wedding, an email arrived addressed to me and my parents together from an account signed The Kingsley Family, which tells you a committee wrote it. I'll summarize it faithfully because I practically have it framed in my head. In a spirit of unity, they were pleased to offer Frank and Carol 2 economy seats departing Cincinnati Friday night, connecting twice, landing in Maui early Saturday afternoon. The ceremony, per the printed schedule, was at 11 in the morning. Read that again, the way I did. They would land after their son was already married. The offer continued. The couple would be welcomed at the reception, where seating had been arranged in the garden overflow area, and the family kindly asked that the printed program remain as printed, which, translated from Kingsley, meant no father-son dance, no toast, no microphone anywhere near a Myers. Accommodations, the email finished, could be discussed upon arrival, which meant there were none. I read it twice and understood exactly what I was holding, because I've written its corporate cousins myself. This wasn't an invitation, and it wasn't peace. Somebody with a camera and a guest list full of lenders had noticed 2 empty chairs where the groom's parents should be, and those chairs were suddenly bad optics. They didn't want my parents at the wedding. They wanted them in the album, background figures at a garden table, proof of family for the money men, flown in like rented greenery after the vows were safely done. A photograph of reconciliation with none of the reconciliation. I printed the email for my parents because they deserved to decide for themselves, drove it over, and put it on the kitchen table without a speech. I didn't even have to answer it. My father did. Dad read the whole email standing up, at the counter. In the reading glasses he pretends are Mom's. He didn't get angry, and somehow that was the loudest part. He read it the way he used to read a work order written by somebody who'd never touched the machine, with a kind of tired, professional recognition. Then he folded the page in half, and in half again, sharp creases, quarters, and set it under the salt shaker like a napkin that had gotten ideas. "Tell them thank you," he said. "We have a wedding to get ready for." That was the entire response, and he meant ours, the tent, the 14th, the vow renewal. Mom stood behind him with her hands on his shoulders, and I watched her look at that folded square of paper, the flight that would have carried her past her son's vows to a garden table in the overflow, and I watched her let it go, physically, her shoulders coming down like a curtain. Then she went back to steaming the blue dress, and she was humming, and the humming was not for show. I went home and answered the email that night. 1 line, no heat, the tone I'd used to decline a meeting. "Thank you for the offer, but Frank and Carol will be celebrating their 40th anniversary at home that weekend, as planned. Send." No reply came, and I didn't expect one. But late that night my phone lit twice, back to back, a number with a Maui area code. No voicemail either time. I stood in my dark kitchen watching the screen go quiet, and I remember thinking, with something that wasn't quite satisfaction and wasn't quite dread, that somebody in paradise had started doing math. Thursday, 1 in the morning, Ohio time, my phone rang, and the screen said Daniel, and I was awake before I was upright. The retreat had ended, phones handed back at the door like coats. He was in transit somewhere between California and the islands, and instead of sleeping, he'd done what people do. He'd scrolled to catch up on the group chat, looking for shuttle times. He found the shuttle times. He also found me asking about our parents' missing flights, and the travel desks finalized, and then the answer that came after. The swimming, the LOL, the little blue wave, sitting in the thread all those days like a knife in a drawer everyone had agreed not to open. And he found my reply underneath it, short as a stamp, and later he told me that little reply scared him worse than anything above them, because he knows me, and he knows I only get that short when something has permanently ended. His voice on the phone was careful, the voice of a man holding something that might be broken, might be explosive, might be both. "Tina," he said, "tell me what happened, all of it." And then he said the thing that undid me, the thing I didn't know he'd ever noticed, let alone had a word for. "Don't manage me." I stood barefoot in my dark apartment, phone to my ear, and the whole architecture of my life leaned on that sentence. 12 years of protecting people from information, at work, at home, always for good reasons, always so nobody gets hurt. My little brother was asking me to hand him the sharp thing and trust him to hold it, so I made a choice. Standing there in the dark, I chose different. I told him the truth like a report, which is the only way I know how to hold a scalpel. Facts, dates, no adjectives, no conclusions. Your fiancé's family announced they'd book all the immediate family travel. They never booked mom and dad. The room block closed 3 weeks before I found out, and the estate takes no one who isn't on the manifest. And I tried. Daniel? I tried with my own card. Flights, hotels, the front desk, everything short of a boat. When I asked in the group chat, Julie said they could swim. You read it yourself. Mom and Dad have known for 10 days. Dad said not to beg, and we're not begging. That's what I know for sure. What it means? I said. And here I made myself slow down, because this was the sentence I'd been practicing against every instinct I own. What it means is yours to decide. I'm not deciding for you. I'm not telling you what she is, or what to do about it, or who to be on Saturday. There was a silence so long I could hear waves through the phone, actual waves, soft and rhythmic, the sound of paradise minding its own business. Then I gave him the only other thing I had. Sunday is Mom and Dad's 40th. There's a white tent going up in the backyard, and Pastor Reed, and Mom's blue dress, and a bench Dad painted for her. You're not summoned. You're loved either way. That's not pressure. It's just information nobody curated for you. He was quiet another moment, and when he spoke his voice had sand in it. I have to see something first, he said, and the line went dead. And I sat on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m. holding a warm phone and no control over anything, which, for a woman like me, is its own kind of free fall. Friday morning, Bree texted me from the Flower World's back channels, where everything is known before it happens. Her Maui contact, doing final installs at Seaglass Point, said the groom had walked into the events tent an hour earlier, calm as weather, and asked to see the printed seating chart and the master manifest. If you've made it this far with me, you already know this was never about plane tickets. It was about who gets counted as family. If somebody ever made your parents feel like background people, type front row in the comments. I read everyone, and subscribe, because the next call I got from Maui is one I will never forget. I got the rest of Friday in fragments, from Bree's back channel and, much later, from Daniel himself. So I'll assemble it for you, the way I eventually assembled it for myself. My brother stood in the events tent with the manifest in his hands and found what I'd found, except he didn't need a forwarded email. It was right there in laminated print, his family name absent from page 1 onward, until someone's hasty pen had added 2 names at the bottom under Saturday arrivals. Garden Overflow. He asked the coordinator one question: when was this list finalized? And the coordinator, being staff, being honest, being tired, told him 5 weeks ago. He walked out of the tent, past the camera crew setting up for golden hour, found Julie mid-fitting, and asked her directly. I wasn't there, so I'll only repeat what he told me. She led with courier error. Then, when the manifest came up, pivoted to protecting his father's health. Then, when the swimming text came up, arrived at it was a joke. Daniel, God, your family is so sensitive. He turned his phone off, and he never appeared at the rehearsal dinner at all, and for several hours my brother was, as far as the Kingsley production was concerned, a missing asset. Meanwhile, 2 commercial lenders and their wives were being seated at the head table with a groom-shaped hole in the evening. I knew none of this in real time. What I knew was that just before midnight Ohio time, my phone lit up on the counter next to a bowl of paper flowers, and the screen said a thing it had never said in 14 months. Julie Kingsley, calling. In all that time she had never once called me. Now she couldn't stop. I answered on the 3rd ring, because I'm not made of stone, and because some part of me had been waiting for this exact caller since the itinerary came out. Tina, she said, and her voice was doing something I'd never heard it do, running fast and smooth at the same time, like a machine overheating under its warranty. Tina, thank God, okay, listen. There's been a whole mess. Things got miscommunicated at every level. The travel desk completely dropped the ball, and I take responsibility for not catching it. I really do. I noted the shape of that apology. Responsibility for not catching it. The way you'd apologize for someone else's weather. Then came the offer, and credit where due, it was spectacular. A chartered jet out of Cincinnati at 7 the next morning, Saturday, wheels up with just Frank and Carol aboard, landing in time for the ceremony. The oceanfront suite, comped. A car, a greeter, orchids in the room, and me, She wanted me on that plane too, running the weekend. My binder, my timelines, my magic, her word, and she said the word paid like it was a rose she was extending stem first. Everything can still be perfect, Tina. Then, so smoothly, I almost missed the hinge, the condition. We just need everybody aligned that this was a courier error, okay? That's all. Especially with Daniel, he's spiraling, he won't even talk to me, and he listens to you. Everyone listens to you. Get him calm and back in place, and tell your parents, and maybe mention to a couple of the guests, the older gentlemen especially, that it was all a shipping mix-up with the tickets. She kept talking, but I'd stopped hearing new information, because I was looking at the whole offer laid out on the table like a contract, and it was everything I had wanted since the itinerary came out. My parents at their son's wedding, the family whole, in one frame, one weekend, one yes, all of it, one signature away, and the pen was a lie. 15 minutes across town, in my parents' garage, a calendar hung over a workbench, 40 red circles deep. I want to be honest about how close I came, because if I pretend it was easy, you'll learn nothing from me, and neither will I. I stood there doing the math I'm best at. Logistics, 7 a.m. wheels up, lands by 10 island time, ceremony at 11. It worked. It actually worked. Dad walks Daniel's mother down a torch-lit aisle after all, Mom in the blue dress at the front where she belongs. The photographer catches the whole thing, and I could sell the courier story. I've smoothed harder lies for smaller reasons. One yes, and my family gets the picture. That's when I finally heard it. The word I'd been circling for 14 months. The picture. Julie was still talking, faster now, sensing the pause, sweetening terms, sweet upgrades, a makeup artist for Mom, and the faster she went, the slower I got, and somewhere in there my voice dropped to the register I use when a decision has already been made, and the meeting just hasn't caught up. Julie, I said, my parents aren't a prop you rent when the picture stops working. Silence. 1 full second of it. Expensive silence. Then she came back sharp, brittle, the brand cracking off her voice in flakes. Are you seriously doing this right now? Over tickets? Over a joke? Do you know what's at stake this weekend? Do you know what my mother... And she stopped herself, but not fast enough, and we both heard where that sentence had been going. What's at stake, I agreed, was a family looking flawless for some very important guests, and I told her, gently, room temperature, that I couldn't help her with that, because the flawless family had trimmed mine off the manifest 5 weeks ago, on purpose, in writing. So that's it, she said. That's your answer? And I gave her the answer I'd been carrying since the wave emoji, except it had grown, the way true things do. Okay? No. Understood. You told me who my parents were to you, I said. I finally listened. I hung up while she was mid-sentence, which I'd never done to anyone in my life, and then I made the harder call, the one with no script. Daniel answered on the first ring, like he'd been holding the phone. I won't fix this for either of you, I told him. Marry her or don't. Come Sunday, or don't. You're my brother either way, and nothing in that tent changes it. Then I turned my phone face down on the counter, sat with my mother's paper flowers in the lamplight, and let Saturday answer for itself. Saturday morning in Ohio was blue and mild, the kind of June day that makes even a parking lot look forgiving. We worked. The tent got its tables, the tables got their linens, ironed by Mom at midnight because rented wrinkles offended her. Bree arrived at 9 with buckets of peonies and hugged my mother so long the coffee went cold. Dad walked the yard with a level in his back pocket. Straightening chair rows nobody else could see were crooked, and I taped the last of 200 paper flowers to mason jars and did not look at my phone. It started going off a little after 5, our time, just after 11 in the morning on Maui, ceremony hour. A buzz, then another, then a rhythm of them. Julie, a Hawaii number. Julie, unknown. Julie, like weather moving in over a lake. I watched it dance across the counter for a minute. This small black rectangle full of somebody else's collapsing picture, and I thought about every year I would have answered on the first vibration, apologizing before I knew what for. Then I opened the kitchen junk drawer, the one with dead batteries and birthday candles and 40 years of twist ties, set the phone inside, and slid it shut. The buzzing kept on, muffled now, a wasp in a jar. Nobody in that backyard knew whether a wedding was happening on a cliff 5,000 miles away, and I genuinely include myself. I didn't know, and I had chosen not to know, and the choosing felt like health. That evening, when I finally opened the drawer to get the charger, the screen told its own short story. 29 missed calls, 1 voicemail. I looked at it for a moment, put it in my pocket unplayed, and went out to test the string lights, because tomorrow was 40 years, and tomorrow was mine. Sunday, June 14th, 4 in the afternoon. The backyard. About 40 people in folding chairs between the tomato beds, and every one of them had earned the seat with 3 decades of casseroles, jumper cables, and showing up. Mom came down the porch steps in the $89 dress, and I promise you, no editorial bride in any magazine has ever landed a dress harder. Dad waited by Bree's peony arch in his one good suit, and when he saw her, this man who once rebuilt an engine on their honeymoon, he had to take his glasses off and look at the sky for a second, and 40 lawn chairs pretended not to notice. Pastor Reed kept it short, the way truth usually is. Then Dad unfolded a piece of notebook paper that had been folded and refolded so many times it moved like cloth, and read his vows. And I'll give you only the end, because the middle belongs to my mother. 40 years ago, I couldn't give you a wedding, he read, and people said we were starting with nothing. They were wrong. We never had a wedding. We had a marriage. I'd trade every party on earth for what I got instead. Then Pastor Reed, grinning, produced the garage calendar, June face out, and in front of everybody, Dad clicked his shop pen and drew the 40th red circle slow, like a signature on a life, and the backyard made a sound I've only otherwise heard at ballparks. Somewhere in the middle of all that, faintly, through the kitchen window and the junk drawer's particle board, I could hear my phone buzzing again, patient and far away, an ocean tapping on a door nobody was going to open. The little band, 2 guys from the print shop and a fiddle, started the first dance, a song from 1986, and my parents swayed under string lights while the sky went peach. That's when headlights swept slow across the fence boards, and an airport taxi rolled to a stop at the curb, and the music kept playing, and my mother's hand went to her mouth. Daniel came through the side gate the way he used to come home from college, shoulders first, apologetic and certain at once, still in his airport clothes, dragging a carry-on with one dead wheel. He didn't make a speech. He set the suitcase against the fence like a man laying down a rifle, walked straight to our mother and asked her to dance, and Carol Myers put her hand in her son's hand and finished the song against his shoulder with her eyes closed. When it ended, he went to Dad. What he said? I only caught because I was close. Refilling lemonade neither man wanted. I was told a story, Dad, he said. I picked this one. My father looked at him a long, level moment, the way he inspects a repair, and then nodded once and pulled him in. And that was the whole conversation, because that's all the conversation those two have ever needed. It wasn't until later, at the cake table, that Daniel gave me the facts in his flat sales engineer voice, eyes on the frosting. Ceremony called off before it started. Ring returned. And he'd resigned from Kingsley House, standing in their events tent, wearing their logo polo, effective immediately. No shouting, he said. Everyone was very professional, which in that family is what dying sounds like. He didn't gloat, and neither did I. There was a girl inside that brand once, and my brother had loved some version of her, and empty chairs at a torchlit cliff hurt strangers who'd done nothing but RSVP. We let it be sad and true at the same time, which was new for us. Then Aunt Patty demanded he try the ham. I stood at the edge of the tent with a paper plate I never filled, watching all of them under the lights, and for the first time in 14 months, in maybe 12 years, I wasn't running anything. I was just there. The aftermath reached me the way weddings had, through the trade. Bree heard it from the Maui installers, who heard it from everyone. The lenders flew home Sunday, and within the month, the refinancing quietly died. Kingsley House ate 6 figures in unrecoverable deposits, listed their smallest venue for sale by fall, and cut a third of the event staff, including, Dot told me at the grocery store, the travel desk. Nobody sued anybody. Nobody needed to. The math they'd built their world on simply did what leverage does when the show closes early. I take no credit and I want none. I never touched a domino. I just stopped holding the table steady. And the world, notice, did not end. 3 weeks after this wedding that wasn't, Julie was posting sunsets again. A new caption about seasons of growth, filtered ocean, forward, always. The machine survives by never looking down. As for the voicemail, the single one from those 29 calls, I played it exactly once, on a Tuesday, parked outside the print shop waiting for Dad. Her voice was small, stripped of the brand, just a tired girl on a beautiful cliff. You were the only thing in that wedding that ever actually worked, she said, and hung up. I sat with that for a minute, because it was the truest sentence she ever gave me, and then I deleted it, and I didn't call back. Some understanding arrives too late to be useful to anyone but you. Daniel took a small apartment across the river with a view of a parking garage, and he calls it recovering with a vista. He interviews on Thursdays, wears his own name on his own shirts now, and comes to mom and dad's every Saturday for breakfast, where dad has him relearning everything the print shop taught him about fixing what's worth fixing, starting with the garden bench's stubborn back leg. Nobody pretends it doesn't hurt him. Some nights he goes quiet in the middle of a laugh, and we let him. But it's clean pain, the kind that's healing straight, no lie inside it like a splinter. Mom says he laughs from lower in his chest now. Dad just says the boy's out of the glare and turns up the radio. In December, I gave notice at the logistics company, and my boss took it like a fire alarm, which I'll admit, felt nice. In February, with the rest of my savings and a small business loan I pitched in a binder, naturally, I opened a coffee shop 6 blocks from my parents' church. It's called The Long Table, and the name is the whole floor plan. One oak table runs down the middle of the room, 14 feet, built by Dad and Daniel over 5 Saturdays of good-natured arguing. There are no booths, no VIP corner, no little tables for 2 by the window where the pretty people go. You come in, you sit at the table, next to whoever's already there. Retired teachers next to line cooks, a judge next to the guy who details her car. On the wall hangs the photography student's best shot, my parents under string lights, mid-dance, mom's hand flat on dad's chest, and behind the register, small, where you'd almost miss it, a wooden sign Daniel carved and refused to explain to customers. It says, "Understood. We do a good business." Turns out a lot of people are tired of auditioning for their seat. Last Sunday morning, before church let out, I stood behind my own counter and watched my whole family around the middle of that long table, Dad holding court with a cinnamon roll, Mom refilling strangers' coffee like it was her kitchen, Daniel laughing from low in his chest, and I finally put words to what the whole year had taught me. My father was right all along. A wedding is a picture, but a marriage is a table. And the people who crop you out of their pictures were never going to save you a seat at their table anyway. That's my story. 2 plane tickets that never came. 1 quiet answer that meant more than Julie thought. And 1 long table with room for everybody. If someone ever treated your family like background people, maybe that's your sign to stop asking for a seat and start building your own table. Share this with the person who holds your family together. Drop a comment with your story. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.